My brother contested the will expecting millions. But they got nothing. The funeral home smelled like lilies and old wood polish, but all I could focus on was my brother Marcus strutting through the door like he owned the place. 3 years. 3 years since he'd bothered to show his face, and now here he was, adjusting his cheap suit and scanning the room with those calculating eyes I remember too well. Sarah. He nodded at me, not even pretending grief. Sorry for your loss. Our loss, I wanted to snap. Grandma Rose had been his grandmother too, though you'd never know it from how he treated her. I bit my tongue and turned back to the guest book, watching him work the room like he was campaigning for office. Shaking hands with distant cousins, accepting condolences with practiced solemnity, playing the part of the devoted grandson. What a joke. The last time Marcus had visited Grandma Rose was Christmas 2020, and only because he needed money for another one of his revolutionary business ideas. That time it had been some cryptocurrency venture that was definitely going to make him millions. Before that, it was the food truck that never materialized, the app that never launched, the real estate flip that went bust. Grandma had stopped writing checks after the crypto disaster, and Marcus had stopped pretending to care. Quite a turnout, Marcus said, sliding up beside me at the back of the chapel. Grandma Rose really touched a lot of lives. I glanced at him sideways. He was surveying the crowd like he was counting votes, or maybe calculating net worth. She did. She was an amazing woman. Absolutely. Sharp as a tack right until the end, wasn't she? There was something pointed in his tone, and I felt my jaw clench. I mean, despite what some people might have suggested about her mental state. There it was. Marcus had spent months last year trying to convince our cousins that Grandma was losing it, that someone needed to step in and manage her finances before she gave it all away to those charity vultures. He'd even consulted with a lawyer about having her declared incompetent, though he'd backed off when Grandma's own attorney made it clear that wouldn't end well for him. She was completely lucid, I said firmly. Dr. Martinez confirmed it just last month. Marcus shrugged. Of course. I never doubted it. Just concerned, you know? Family looking out for family. He paused, and I could practically hear the gears turning. Speaking of which, when is the will reading scheduled? And there it was. The real reason Marcus had graced us with his presence, wearing a suit that probably cost more than he should have been able to afford given his employment history. He wasn't here to mourn our grandmother or support the family. He was here for his payday. Tomorrow at 2. Henderson, Mills and Associates. Good, good. Probably best to get these things sorted quickly. He was trying to sound casual, but I caught the gleam in his eyes. I'm sure Grandma Rose was generous in her final wishes. Generous. Right. Marcus had been counting on Grandma Rose's generosity since he was 18 and figured out that his sweet, mild-mannered grandmother had quietly amassed a fortune through decades of smart investments and frugal living. $8 million, give or take, not counting the properties. I wondered if he had any idea what was coming for him. I'm sure her wishes will be honored exactly as she intended, I said carefully. Marcus smiled that old familiar smile, the one that never reached his eyes. I'm counting on it. The next morning, I sat in Grandma Rose's kitchen for what would probably be the last time, sipping coffee from her favorite mug, the chipped blue one with World's Best Grandma that I'd given her when I was 12. In a few hours, the house would belong to someone else, and I'd have to say goodbye to the place that had been my second home for 28 years. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Jennifer. * Marcus has been calling everyone asking about the will. Did you know he's been telling people Grandma promised in the house? Also that he's the main beneficiary because he's the oldest grandson? What a piece of work. *. I snorted into my coffee. Marcus wasn't just competent, he was already making plans. According to Jennifer, he'd spent yesterday evening at Uncle Pete's house, magnanimously discussing how he intended to take care of the family once he inherited. He'd even mentioned something about setting up trust funds, like he was some benevolent patriarch instead of the guy who'd missed every birthday, every holiday, every hospital stay for the past 3 years. The irony was suffocating. While Marcus had been spinning fantasies about his inheritance, I'd been here every Tuesday and Thursday, driving Grandma to doctor appointments, grocery shopping, helping her manage medications. I'd held her hand through chemo treatments that Marcus didn't even know about because he never called. I'd been the one to find her that morning 2 weeks ago, peaceful in her sleep, still wearing the reading glasses she'd had on while writing in her journal the night before. Marcus had learned about her death from Facebook. My phone rang, speak of the devil. Sarah, hey. Marcus's voice was bright, almost cheerful. I was thinking about today, and I wanted to run something by you. What's that? Well, after the will reading, there's going to be a lot to sort out. Estate stuff, you know? I was thinking maybe you could help me organize everything. Grandma always said you were good with details. I gripped the phone tighter. Help you organize everything? The properties, investments, all that. I know it seems overwhelming, but we'll figure it out together. Family, right? He paused, and I could practically hear him calculating. Obviously, I'll make sure you're compensated for your time. Maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. An arrangement. He was already offering me a job managing the estate he thought he was about to inherit. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. That's very thoughtful of you, Marcus. I mean, it's the least I can do. Grandma Rose always talked about how much you helped out around the house. It didn't go unnoticed. Didn't go unnoticed. As if my 3 years of daily care was just helping out around the house, something worthy of a nice tip rather than, well, I'd find out exactly what it was worthy of in a few hours. I appreciate that, I managed. I guess we'll see what happens at the reading. Right. Though between you and me, I think we both know Grandma Rose believed in taking care of family first. She was traditional that way. Traditional. The same woman who'd started her own business in 1975, who'd traveled to 6 continents, who'd told me just last month that the best thing about having money was being able to decide exactly who deserved it. She definitely had strong opinions about who deserved what, I said. Exactly. Anyway, I should let you go. Big day ahead. Marcus sounded practically giddy. See you at Henderson's office at 2. After he hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by Grandma Rose's things, and smiled for the first time since the funeral. Marcus had no idea what was coming. The law office of Henderson, Mills and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown building that had probably been impressive in 1987. Now it just felt tired, all burgundy carpet and brass fixtures that needed polishing. I arrived 15 minutes early and found Marcus already in the waiting room, leg bouncing with nervous energy. Sarah. There you are. He jumped up like he'd been waiting for hours. Can you believe this place? Very established. Grandma Rose always did like tradition. I noticed he'd upgraded his suit since yesterday. This one actually fit properly and didn't have the shiny patches around the elbows. Either he'd gone shopping with money he didn't have, or he was that confident about today's outcome. Mr. Henderson will see you now, the receptionist announced, and Marcus practically bounded toward the inner office. Robert Henderson was exactly what you'd expect from a lawyer who'd been handling estate planning since the Carter administration, silver-haired, wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of measured speaking voice that made everything sound important. He gestured us toward leather chairs across from his mahogany desk, where several manila folders waited in neat stacks. First, let me express my condolences. Rose was a remarkable woman, and a valued client for over 30 years. Henderson's eyes lingered on me for just a moment longer than Marcus. She was very particular about her final wishes. Marcus leaned forward eagerly. She always was detail-oriented. That's what made her such a successful businesswoman. Something flickered across Henderson's face, amusement, maybe, or pity. Indeed. Now, before we begin, I should mention that Mrs. Delacroix made several revisions to her will over the years. The final version was executed on March 15th of this year. March 15th. 2 weeks after Marcus's last phone call to Grandma Rose, the one where he'd screamed at her about being selfish and hoarding money while family struggled. I'd been there that day, helping her plant tomatoes in her garden, when she'd hung up and quietly asked me to drive her to the lawyer's office. Revisions are normal, Marcus said smoothly. She probably just wanted to make sure everything was current. Henderson opened the top folder and pulled out a thick document. The last will and testament of Rose Marie Delacroix, dated March 15, 2024. He cleared his throat and began reading the standard legal preamble, but I could see Marcus fidgeting, clearly wanting to skip to the good parts. To my beloved granddaughter Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, Henderson continued, and I felt Marcus stiffen beside me. I leave my home at 1247 Maple Street, along with all its contents, in recognition of her devoted care and companionship during my final years. That's nice, Marcus said tightly. Grandma always loved that house. Henderson wasn't finished. I also bequeath to Sarah my investment portfolio managed by Steinberg Financial, currently valued at approximately $3.2 million, as well as the rental properties on Oak Avenue and Cedar Lane. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Marcus's breathing change, becoming shallow and rapid. His leg had stopped bouncing. I'm sorry, Marcus said slowly. Could you repeat that last part? The investment portfolio and rental properties go to Sarah, Henderson repeated calmly, consulting his notes. Combined current value of roughly $4.7 million. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face as he did the math. If Grandma Rose's estate was worth around $8 million total, and I'd just inherited nearly $5 million plus the house. What about the rest? Marcus's voice came out strangled. The other assets? Henderson turned the page. To the American Cancer Society, Doctors Without Borders, and the local food bank, I leave the remainder of my liquid assets, totaling approximately $2.8 million, divided equally among the 3 organizations. The math was brutal and beautiful. Marcus had gone from expecting $8 million to watching $7.5 million get distributed to everyone except him. But what about Marcus? I asked quietly, though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. Henderson flipped to the final page of the will, and I swear I saw the ghost of a smile cross his professional facade. To my grandson Marcus James Morrison, I leave a sum of $1, along with this letter. The silence stretched so long I could hear the air conditioning humming in the vents. Marcus sat frozen, his mouth slightly open, staring at Henderson like a man had just spoken in ancient Greek. $1? Marcus finally managed. That's correct. Henderson reached into the folder and withdrew a sealed envelope with Marcus's name written in Grandma Rose's careful script. She was very specific that this letter be read aloud, if you're comfortable with that, Mr. Morrison. Marcus's hands trembled as he reached for the envelope. No, I'll read it myself first. But Henderson shook his head gently. I'm afraid Mrs. Delacroix's instructions were quite explicit. The letter is to be read aloud in the presence of all beneficiaries, or not at all. She was very clear about this point. I watched Marcus's face cycle through emotions, confusion, anger, panic, and something that might have been fear. His expensive new suit suddenly looked like a costume, and I could see sweat beginning to bead along his hairline. This is a mistake, Marcus said, his voice getting higher. Grandma Rose wouldn't, she always said family comes first. She told me I was like the son she never had. Henderson's expression remained carefully neutral. Shall I read the letter, Mr. Morrison? Marcus looked at me desperately, like I might somehow fix this for him. Sarah, you know this isn't right. Tell him. Grandma Rose always talked about taking care of family, about legacy, about what, Marcus? I kept my voice steady, but inside I was singing. About how family shows up when it matters? About how love isn't measured in dollars but in time and presence and actually giving a damn? I gave a damn. Marcus's composure was cracking. I called. I visited. When? When did you visit? I leaned forward in my chair. Because I was there every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 years, and I never saw you. Not once. I was building my business, trying to create something that could benefit the whole family. Henderson cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should proceed with the letter. Mrs. Delacroix's words might provide some clarity. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick, but he nodded jerkily. Henderson carefully opened the envelope and unfolded what looked like several pages of Grandma Rose's handwriting. My dear Marcus, Henderson began, and even in his measured lawyer's voice, I could hear the echo of Grandma Rose's tone. If you are hearing this letter, it means I have passed away and you have come to claim what you believe is rightfully yours. I want you to know that I have been completely aware of your expectations regarding my estate. Marcus was gripping the arms of his leather chair so hard his knuckles had gone white. I know you have told several family members that I promised you my house. I know you have described yourself as my primary heir to multiple people, including your cousin Jennifer and your uncle Pete. I know this because they were concerned enough about these claims to ask me directly about them. Oh God. Grandma Rose had known everything. Every lie, every assumption, every conversation where Marcus had counted money that was never his. Marcus made a strangled noise that might have been a protest, but Henderson continued reading. I also know about your consultation with Morrison and Associates regarding having me declared mentally incompetent. Yes, Marcus, I know about that too. The law office fell completely silent except for the sound of Marcus's increasingly labored breathing. Henderson's voice remained steady, but I could see even he was affected by the weight of Grandma Rose's words. Marcus looked like he was about to pass out. The consultation took place on August 14, 2023, at 10:30 a.m. You met with Patricia Morrison, no relation, despite the shared surname, and discussed the possibility of having me evaluated for dementia or Alzheimer's. You told her that I was giving away large sums to charities and that my judgment was clearly impaired. Marcus's face had gone from pale to gray. How could she possibly? I never. What you didn't know, Marcus, is that Patricia Morrison and I served together on the hospital board for 15 years. She called me that afternoon to express her concerns about your visit. She was professionally obligated to inform me of your inquiry, and personally motivated to warn me about what she called your predatory behavior toward an elderly relative. I felt a chill run down my spine. Grandma Rose had known for over a year that Marcus was actively working against her, trying to have her declared incompetent so he could control her money. And she'd never said a word to me about it. Henderson turned the page. This brings me to why you are receiving exactly $1 and nothing more. The dollar is not symbolic, Marcus. It is proof that I did not forget you or overlook you in my will. I made a deliberate choice to exclude you from my estate, and I want that choice to be legally unambiguous. Marcus shot to his feet suddenly, his chair rolling backward. This is insane. She was obviously manipulated. Sarah, you had to have influenced her somehow, turned her against me. Sit down, Mr. Morrison, Henderson said firmly. There's more. I don't want to hear more. This is fraud. Coercion. I'll contest this will, You'll lose, Henderson interrupted, his professional mask slipping just enough to show steel underneath. I've been practicing estate law for 37 years, Mr. Morrison. Your grandmother was one of the most mentally acute clients I've ever represented. She anticipated your reaction to this will, which is why she was so thorough in documenting her reasoning. Marcus slowly sank back into his chair, and I could see the exact moment when reality began to penetrate his shock. All those plans he'd made, all those promises to the family about trust funds and generosity, all those expensive purchases he'd probably made on credit assuming he'd be able to pay them off next week. Sarah, Henderson continued, and I realized Grandma Rose was now addressing me. I hope you understand why I made these choices. You have given me 3 years of your life, asking for nothing in return except the joy of my company. You drove me to chemotherapy appointments that Marcus never knew about. You held my hand through panic attacks about mortality that Marcus would have seen as weakness. You listened to my stories about your grandfather, even when I repeated them, because you knew they brought me comfort. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't bother wiping them away. Hearing Grandma Rose's words in Henderson's voice was like getting one last conversation with her. Marcus, you called me twice in 3 years, both times asking for money. You missed my 78th, 79th, and 80th birthdays. You were not present for my cancer diagnosis, my treatment, or my recovery. You did not call during my hospitalization last winter. You learned of my death from a social media post. Marcus was crying now too, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of panic, of a man watching his entire future crumble in real time. The money you expected was never yours, because you never earned it through love, presence, or care. Sarah earned it through 3 years of devotion. The charities earned it through decades of meaningful work helping others. Henderson paused and looked directly at Marcus. You, my dear grandson, earned exactly $1. I suggest you spend it wisely. The letter wasn't over. Henderson cleared his throat and continued, Sarah, there is one final matter I need you to handle. In my bedroom closet, behind the photo albums, you'll find a blue metal lockbox. Inside are copies of every email, text message, and voicemail Marcus sent me over the past 5 years. I had my friend Dorothy's grandson, he works in computers, help me preserve everything digitally. My blood ran cold. I'd seen some of those messages when Grandma's phone would buzz during our visits. The angry texts when she refused to co-sign a loan. The voicemails calling her selfish and ungrateful after she declined to invest in his schemes. Marcus, yes, I kept everything. Including the message you sent last Christmas where you said, and I quote, fine, be a bitter old woman hoarding your money until you die alone. Don't expect me to pretend to care anymore. You also wrote that I was too stupid to understand modern business and that you'd dance on my grave when the money finally goes to someone who deserves it. Marcus had gone completely white. I stared at him in horror, remembering how confused and hurt Grandma had seemed after Christmas, how she kept asking me if she'd done something wrong because Marcus had stopped calling entirely. Those messages were taken out of context, Marcus whispered. I was frustrated, I was going through a rough patch financially, I didn't mean. The lockbox also contains documentation of the $47,000 I gave you between 2019 and 2021, Henderson read relentlessly. Money that was supposed to be loans, according to our conversations, but which you have never made any attempt to repay. The promissory notes you signed are all there, Marcus. Every single one. $47,000. I'd known Grandma had helped him out occasionally, but I'd had no idea it was that much. Marcus was staring at his hands, his whole body trembling. Sarah will have the discretion to pursue collection of these debts or forgive him as she sees fit. However, I want you to understand, Marcus, that your inheritance expectation was based on money you had already received and failed to honor. Henderson folded the letter carefully. That concludes Mrs. Delacroix's personal message. There are a few administrative details to cover, but the major provisions are as I've outlined them. Marcus sat in absolute silence for a long moment. Then, suddenly, he exploded. This is bullshit. He slammed his hand on Henderson's desk, making the manila folders jump. $47,000 over 3 years? That's nothing. She was sitting on $8 million. $8 million. And she's going to destroy me over some fucking text messages I sent when I was desperate? Mr. Morrison, please lower your voice, Henderson said sharply. No. I won't lower my voice. This is my inheritance. My birthright. I'm the oldest grandchild, I'm the only male heir, and some dying old woman's hurt feelings don't override family obligation. I found my voice, and it came out deadly quiet. Dying old woman? Marcus whirled on me, his face twisted with rage and desperation. You know what I meant. Don't act like. No, Marcus. I know exactly what you meant. I stood up slowly, feeling 3 years of suppressed anger crystallizing into something sharp and focused. That dying old woman raised us when Mom and Dad were too busy drinking to remember they had children. That dying old woman paid for your college when they wouldn't. That dying old woman gave you nearly $50,000 and never asked for a single payment back. She could afford it. So that made it okay? To call her stupid? To say you dance on her grave? My voice was rising now, and I didn't care. She died thinking you hated her, Marcus. She died believing that her own grandson saw her as nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. Marcus's anger cracked, showing the panic underneath. Sarah, please. We can work this out. The money doesn't matter, family matters. We can share the estate, we can. The estate has been distributed exactly as she wanted, Henderson interrupted firmly. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to need you to sign some papers acknowledging receipt of your bequest. Henderson slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. At the top, in formal legal language, it confirmed that Marcus James Morrison had received the sum of $1 from the estate of Rosemarie Delacroix, paid in full. Marcus stared at the paper like it might bite him. What if I refuse to sign? Then you receive nothing at all, Henderson said simply. The dollar is contingent on your acknowledgement of the will's terms. I watched my brother's face as he realized this was really happening. No last-minute reversal, no legal loophole, no way to charm or manipulate his way back into Grandma Rose's fortune. Just $1 and the knowledge that every terrible thing he'd said and done had been carefully documented and remembered. With shaking hands, Marcus signed the paper. The dollar bill Henderson handed him looked almost obscene in the opulent law office, crisp and new, like Grandma had gone to the bank specifically for this moment. Marcus stood up unsteadily, clutching his inheritance. This isn't over, he said, but there was no fire left in his voice. Just the hollow sound of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. He walked out without another word, leaving me alone with Henderson and $8 million worth of consequences. After Marcus left, Henderson and I sat in heavy silence for several minutes. I kept staring at the door he'd walked through, half expecting him to come charging back in with lawyers or police or some new scheme to overturn what had just happened. That was harder than I expected, I admitted finally. Henderson nodded, gathering up the papers with practiced efficiency. Your grandmother warned me it would be. She actually asked me to schedule extra time for today's appointment because, and I quote, Marcus will not go quietly into that good night. Despite everything, I smiled. That sounded exactly like something Grandma Rose would say, equal parts literary reference and dry observation about human nature. Mr. Henderson, can I ask you something? How long ago did she start planning this? He paused in his paper shuffling and considered the question carefully. The first major revision happened about 18 months ago, right after Marcus's attempt to have her declared incompetent fell through. But honestly, Sarah, I think she'd been watching and evaluating for much longer than that. What do you mean? Your grandmother was, let's say she was very thorough in her decision-making process. She kept detailed records of every interaction with family members going back years. Phone calls, visits, birthday cards sent and received, who attended family gatherings. Henderson pulled out a thick folder I hadn't noticed before. She brought me this about 6 months ago. The folder was labeled Family Documentation in Grandma Rose's neat handwriting. Henderson opened it to reveal what looked like a comprehensive spreadsheet, with columns for dates, family members, types of contact, and detailed notes. She tracked everything, I breathed, scanning the pages. There were entries going back to 2019, meticulously documenting every phone call, every visit, every request for money. Marcus's entries were sparse and almost exclusively connected to financial requests. Mine filled page after page, doctor's appointments, grocery trips, Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations. She showed me this and said, Robert, I want to be absolutely certain that my final decisions are based on facts, not feelings. When Marcus contests this will, and he will contest it, I want there to be no question about my reasoning. My stomach dropped. When he contests it? Not if? Henderson's expression grew grim. Your grandmother was very realistic about your brother's character. She fully expected him to claim undue influence, mental incompetence, fraud, whatever legal avenue he thought might work. And will it? Work, I mean? Not a chance. Henderson's confidence was reassuring. Rose spent months building an unassailable legal foundation. She had 2 independent psychiatric evaluations confirming her mental competence. She documented every decision extensively. She even had me interview character witnesses who could testify about her state of mind and Marcus's behavior toward her. Character witnesses. I thought about Dorothy from next door, who'd watched Marcus scream at Grandma Rose through the kitchen window last spring. About Dr. Martinez, who'd seen the stress Grandma was under every time Marcus called demanding money. About Jennifer and Uncle Pete and all the other family members who'd been subjected to Marcus's increasingly grandiose claims about his inheritance. There's something else, Henderson continued, and his tone made me look up sharply. Your grandmother anticipated that Marcus might become persistent in his efforts to change the outcome. What kind of persistent? Henderson reached into his desk drawer and pulled out another sealed envelope, this one marked, for Sarah, open only if necessary, in Grandma Rose's handwriting. She asked me to give you this if Marcus showed signs of escalating his response. Given his outburst today and his threat that this isn't over, I think we've reached that point. I took the envelope with trembling fingers. Should I open it now? That's your decision. But Sarah, I want you to know that if your brother does try to contest this will, it's going to get ugly. He's looking at losing approximately $8 million. People have done terrible things for much less. The weight of that statement settled over me like a cold blanket. Marcus wasn't just angry about losing an inheritance, he was facing financial ruin. Those expensive suits, the confident promises he'd made to family members about trust funds and generosity, the lifestyle he'd apparently been living on credit while expecting Grandma Rose to fund it retroactively. How long do we have before he can officially contest? In this state, he has 90 days from today to file. But Sarah, even if he files, it doesn't mean anything will come of it. Your grandmother's will is rock solid. 90 days. 3 months of waiting for the other shoe to drop, wondering what desperate measures Marcus might take to try to overturn Grandma Rose's final wishes. I stood up carefully, still holding the mysterious envelope. I should probably get going. There's a lot to process. Of course. But Sarah? Henderson's voice stopped me at the door. Your grandmother chose wisely. She knew exactly what she was doing, and more importantly, she knew exactly who deserved her trust. Walking out into the afternoon sunlight felt surreal, like emerging from a movie theater after a particularly intense film. I had inherited a fortune. My brother had inherited $1 and a grudge. And somewhere in the envelope clutched in my hand, Grandma Rose had left me instructions for whatever came next. I had a feeling I was going to need them. I drove to Grandma Rose's house on autopilot, my hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. The envelope Henderson had given me sat on the passenger seat like a loaded gun, and I couldn't decide if I was more afraid of what it contained or what Marcus might do next. The house felt different when I unlocked the front door, emptier somehow, even though nothing had physically changed since yesterday. I made my way to Grandma's bedroom and found the blue lockbox exactly where her letter had described, hidden behind photo albums that chronicled 8 decades of family memories. The lockbox was heavier than I'd expected. Inside, true to her word, were printed copies of every text message, email, and transcribed voicemail Marcus had sent over the past 5 years. I spread them across her quilted bedspread chronologically, and the progression was nauseating. 2019 had started normally enough, happy birthday Grandma and hope you're doing well. But by late 2020, the tone shifted dramatically. Need to talk to you about a business opportunity. This investment could set our whole family up for generations. Can't believe you don't trust your own grandson. Then came 2021, and the messages turned ugly. You're being selfish and short-sighted. I'm your only male heir and you're throwing away my future. The Christmas message Henderson had quoted was even worse in full context, 3 paragraphs of venom about how Grandma Rose was too old and scared to understand modern opportunities. But it was the messages from this past spring that made my blood run cold. After Grandma had refused to co-sign a loan for Marcus's latest venture, he'd sent a series of texts that were borderline threatening. You can't live forever, you know. Don't think I'll forget how you treated family when it mattered. Hope your charity friends will be there to hold your hand when you're dying alone. I had to put the papers down and walk away. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands and tried to process the level of cruelty my brother was capable of. These weren't just angry words said in frustration, they were calculated, sustained emotional abuse directed at an elderly woman who had loved him unconditionally for 31 years. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Sarah, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Murphy's Diner on 5th Street? 1 hour. I stared at the message. After everything that had just happened, he wanted to grab coffee like we were sorting out weekend plans. The audacity was breathtaking. Then another text, please. I know today was a shock for both of us, but we're still family. There has to be a way to work this out. A third message followed immediately. I've already talked to Jennifer and Uncle Pete. They agree this doesn't seem like something Grandma Rose would do. They think you might have more influence on this situation than you realize. My stomach dropped. Marcus was already working the family, planting seeds of doubt about the will's legitimacy. Making it sound like I had somehow manipulated a dying woman into changing her estate plans. Jennifer and Uncle Pete didn't know about the lockbox, about the documented years of abuse, about Marcus's attempt to have Grandma declared incompetent. I picked up Henderson's envelope and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a phone number and the words, Sarah, if Marcus tries to turn the family against you, call this number. Ask for Detective Morrison, no relation. He's been waiting to hear from you. Grandma Rose. Detective Morrison. Why would Grandma Rose have a detective's contact information ready for me? With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. Detective Morrison, Financial Crimes Division. Hi, this is Sarah Morrison. Rose Delacroix asked me to call you if certain circumstances arose. Ms. Morrison. Yes, I've been expecting your call. Your grandmother filed a report with us 6 months ago regarding potential elder financial abuse. She said you might need our assistance after her passing. The words elder financial abuse hit me like a physical blow. I sank into one of Grandma Rose's kitchen chairs, still clutching the phone. I'm sorry, Detective Morrison, but I'm not sure I understand. What kind of report? Your grandmother came to us last October with documentation of what she believed was a pattern of financial exploitation by a family member. She was particularly concerned about escalating threats and what she described as coercive behavior designed to pressure her into changing her will. October. That was right after Marcus had screamed at her about the co-signed loan, when I'd found her sitting in her garden crying and she told me it was just family stress. She never mentioned anything to me about filing a police report. She was very specific that you shouldn't know unless circumstances warranted it. Mrs. Delacroix was concerned that involving you might put you in an uncomfortable position with other family members. Detective Morrison's voice was kind but professional. She said, and I quote, Sarah has enough to worry about without being dragged into Marcus's mess unless absolutely necessary. Even from beyond the grave, Grandma Rose had been trying to protect me. What exactly did she document? $47,000 in loans that were never repaid, despite signed promissory notes. Multiple instances of verbal abuse over the phone, which she recorded with a voice app her neighbor's grandson installed. Threatening text messages. And most significantly, his consultation with a lawyer about having her declared mentally incompetent. My phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. Sarah, I'm heading to Murphy's now. We really need to discuss this situation before it gets out of hand. Detective Morrison, my brother wants to meet with me right now. He's been texting other family members, trying to convince them that the will is suspicious. There was a pause. Ms. Morrison, I need you to understand something. Your grandmother's estate just became public record as of today. If your brother has been making financial commitments based on an expected inheritance of several $1 million, he's now facing a significant problem. What kind of problem? The kind that makes people desperate. Your grandmother was worried that when the will was read, your brother might escalate his behavior toward you specifically, since you're now the primary beneficiary. Another text from Marcus: I'm at the diner. Where are you? Don't make this harder than it has to be. The phrasing sent chills down my spine. Don't make this harder than it has to be sounded less like a family discussion and more like a threat. Detective, what should I do? About meeting him, I mean? That's your choice, but if you do decide to meet, I'd strongly recommend doing it in a public place with witnesses present. And Ms. Morrison? Don't go alone. After hanging up, I sat in Grandma Rose's kitchen trying to process everything. My brother wasn't just angry about losing an inheritance, he was potentially under criminal investigation for elder abuse. The police had been watching him for months, waiting to see how far he'd push things. My phone rang. Jennifer. Sarah, honey, Marcus just called me in tears. He says there's been some terrible mistake with Grandma Rose's will, that maybe someone pressured her or forged documents or something. He's absolutely devastated. What the hell happened at that lawyer's office? I closed my eyes. It was starting already, Marcus's campaign to rewrite history, to paint himself as the victim and me as the manipulator. Jennifer didn't know about the lockbox full of abusive messages, about the police report, about the months of careful documentation Grandma Rose had compiled. Jen, there was no mistake. Grandma Rose left her estate exactly as she intended. But $8 million, Sarah. Marcus said you got almost everything and he got nothing. That doesn't sound like Grandma Rose at all. She always talked about family taking care of family. She did take care of family. She took care of the family member who actually cared about her. There was a long pause. Sarah, please tell me you didn't. I mean, you wouldn't have influenced her somehow, would you? Marcus is saying some pretty serious things about manipulation and fraud. The accusation hung in the air between us, and I felt something break inside my chest. Even Jennifer, who'd known me my entire life, was ready to believe that I'd somehow conned an elderly woman out of millions of dollars. I think this conversation is over, I said quietly, and hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts from Marcus. Sarah, what's wrong? Just come talk to me. Family shouldn't fight like this. But I was done playing his games. Detective Morrison had been right, Marcus was desperate, and desperate people did dangerous things. I was about to find out exactly how dangerous my brother could be. The next morning, I woke up to find my car tires slashed. All 4 of them, cut clean through with what looked like a knife. I stood in Grandma Rose's driveway at 7 a.m., staring at the shredded rubber and feeling my stomach turn to ice. The house next door was close enough that whoever did this had to know they might be seen, which meant they either didn't care or wanted me to know it was deliberate. My phone had 17 missed calls from Marcus, all between midnight and 3 a.m. The voicemail started apologetic. Sarah, please call me back. We need to fix this. But by the final message his tone had shifted to something darker. You can't hide behind lawyers forever. Family business should stay in the family. I called Detective Morrison. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said after I described the tire situation. Don't touch anything else on the vehicle, and Ms. Morrison? Pack a bag. You shouldn't stay at that house alone tonight. While I waited, I called a tow truck and then Jennifer back. She answered on the first ring. Sarah. Thank God. Marcus came by my house last night around midnight, completely hysterical. He was rambling about how you'd poisoned Grandma Rose against him, how he was going to lose everything. Jim had to threaten to call the police to get him to leave. Jen, someone slashed my tires last night. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Sarah, you don't think Marcus would actually? I mean, he was upset but he wouldn't. 6 months ago, would you have thought he'd try to have Grandma declared mentally incompetent so he could control her money? Another pause. What are you talking about? I told her about the police report, about the lockbox full of abusive messages, about the systematic documentation of financial exploitation that Marcus had been carrying out for years. With each revelation, I could hear Jennifer's perception of her cousin crumbling. Oh my God, she whispered. Sarah, I had no idea. When he called me yesterday talking about the will, he sounded so hurt, so confused. He said Grandma Rose had promised him the house, that you must have convinced her to change everything. He's been lying to everyone, Jen. Grandma Rose never promised him anything. She stopped giving him money 2 years ago because he never paid any of it back, and he's been treating her like garbage ever since. The messages you mentioned, do you have copies? I have everything. Grandma Rose documented it all. I looked out the window and saw Detective Morrison pulling into the driveway. I have to go. The police are here. Detective Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with graying temples and the kind of steady demeanor that probably served him well in financial crimes investigations. He photographed the tires from multiple angles and dusted the car for fingerprints, though he warned me they probably wouldn't find anything useful. Your brother's not stupid, he said, examining the clean cuts in the rubber. This was done with a box cutter or utility knife, no fingerprints on the blade, and he probably wore gloves. But Ms. Morrison, this escalation concerns me. Escalation? Yesterday your brother lost $8 million. Last night he destroyed your property. People in this situation, sometimes they start thinking that if they can't have what they want, maybe they can at least make sure you can't have it either. The implication hung heavy in the morning air. Marcus wasn't just trying to get his inheritance back anymore. He was moving into revenge territory. Detective, what would happen if something happened to me? Before the estate is fully transferred? Morrison's expression darkened. That's exactly what I'm worried about you thinking, because it means you're starting to think like someone who's desperate. Your grandmother's will is ironclad, Ms. Morrison. If something happened to you, the money would go to charity as specified in the residuary clause. Your brother would still get nothing. But desperate people didn't always think logically. And Marcus had never been particularly good at long-term planning. My phone rang as Detective Morrison was finishing up with the tire evidence. Unknown number. Sarah? It's Robert Henderson. I'm calling from my personal cell because I didn't want this going through the office. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. What's wrong? I had a visitor this morning. Your brother was waiting in our parking garage when I arrived at 7:30. He approached me with what he called a business proposition. Detective Morrison looked up sharply from his notepad. I put the phone on speaker. Marcus offered me $50,000 to find irregularities in your grandmother's will. When I refused, he became aggressive. He said he knew I had falsified documents before, which is completely untrue, and that he had ways of making my life very difficult if I didn't cooperate. My hands started shaking. Did he threaten you? Not directly. But he mentioned that he knew where my wife worked, where my daughter went to school. He said it would be unfortunate if rumors started circulating about my professional ethics. Henderson's voice was tight with controlled anger. I've called building security and filed a report, but I wanted you to know that your brother is clearly unraveling. After Henderson hung up, Detective Morrison was quiet for a long moment, writing something in his notepad. Finally, he looked up at me with grim eyes. Ms. Morrison, we need to discuss protective measures. Your brother threatened an officer of the court this morning and vandalized your property last night. He's escalating rapidly. What kind of protective measures? Restraining order, for starters. But honestly, that's just a piece of paper. If Marcus is as desperate as he appears to be, legal documents aren't going to stop him. Morrison closed his notepad. There's something else. We ran a financial background check on your brother yesterday after your call. He's in significantly worse shape than we initially realized. How bad? He owes $68,000 on credit cards, has a second mortgage he's 3 months behind on, and apparently took out a substantial personal loan last month using his expected inheritance as collateral. Morrison's expression was grave. Ms. Morrison, your brother has been spending money he didn't have based on money he was never going to receive. As of yesterday, he's facing bankruptcy and potentially criminal charges for loan fraud. The scope of Marcus's financial catastrophe was staggering. He hadn't just expected Grandma Rose's money, he'd borrowed against it, spent it, used it as collateral for other debts. The inheritance wasn't just about greed anymore, it was about survival. How much did he borrow against the inheritance? $240,000. The loan was approved based on documentation he provided showing he was the primary beneficiary of an $8 million estate. I felt sick. Documentation? What kind of documentation? Morrison consulted his notes. A forged letter supposedly from your grandmother, confirming his status as main heir. The bank is now considering fraud charges. Marcus had forged a letter from Grandma Rose. He'd been so confident about his inheritance that he'd committed felony fraud to borrow against money that was never his. And now that the real will was public record, everyone would know he'd lied. Detective, if he's facing fraud charges and bankruptcy, what exactly does he have left to lose? Morrison's answer chilled me to the bone, nothing. And that makes him exponentially more dangerous. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Sarah, I know you're talking to the police. Big mistake. This is still family business, and family should handle things privately. Meet me at Grandma's house at 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone, or this gets much worse for both of us. Detective Morrison read the message and immediately started making calls. Within minutes, he'd arranged for patrol cars to monitor the house and had contacted the district attorney's office about expediting a restraining order. But as I packed a bag to stay elsewhere that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were several steps behind Marcus's desperation. He'd already crossed lines I never thought he'd cross, and the message's thread about things getting much worse suggested he had plans we hadn't anticipated. Grandma Rose had tried to protect me by documenting everything, but even she couldn't have predicted how far Marcus would fall or how dangerous he'd become when his carefully constructed house of lies finally collapsed. The lockbox in her bedroom contained evidence of financial abuse, but it was starting to feel like Marcus was just getting started. That evening, I was staying at Jennifer's house when Detective Morrison called with news that made my blood run cold. We executed a search warrant on your brother's apartment this afternoon, he said without preamble. Sarah, we found detailed floor plans of your grandmother's house, photographs of your daily routine, and what appears to be surveillance notes tracking your movements over the past 2 weeks. I nearly dropped the phone. Surveillance notes? Times you arrived at the house, when you left, which routes you took to the grocery store. He's been watching you, Sarah. This goes way beyond slashed tires and angry phone calls. Jennifer, who'd been listening from the couch, went pale. Jesus Christ. Tom, Marcus was here 2 nights ago asking if I knew Sarah's schedule. He said he wanted to coordinate with her about estate stuff. I told him she usually went to Grandma's house on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Marcus had been using our family to gather intelligence, turning Jennifer into an unwitting accomplice in whatever he was planning. There's more, Morrison continued. We found receipts for some concerning purchases. Zip ties, duct tape, a prepaid phone, and something called chloroform reagent that he ordered online. The room started spinning. Zip ties and duct tape weren't tools for threatening someone or vandalizing property. They were restraint materials. Detective, what exactly do you think he's planning? Nothing good. We've issued an APB and contacted the FBI, since this appears to involve kidnapping conspiracy across state lines. He researched remote locations in 3 different states. Morrison's voice was tight. Sarah, I need you to understand something. Your brother isn't just desperate for money anymore. Based on the materials we found, we believe he may be planning to hold you for ransom or force you to sign documents transferring the inheritance. Jennifer grabbed my arm. Sarah, that's insane. Marcus wouldn't actually kidnap his own sister, would he? But even as she said it, I could see doubt creeping into her expression. The Marcus we thought we knew wouldn't have emotionally abused an elderly woman for years either. Wouldn't have forged legal documents or borrowed hundreds of thousands against money that wasn't his. The person we'd grown up with had apparently been a fiction. We also found this, Morrison said, and I heard papers rustling. A handwritten letter addressed to you. I'm going to read part of it. Sarah, you forced my hand by stealing what was rightfully mine. Grandma Rose was obviously manipulated in her final months, and since the legal system won't recognize the truth, I have to take matters into my own hands. If you cooperate and sign the documents I've prepared transferring half the estate to me, this can all be resolved quietly. If you don't cooperate, I can't be responsible for what happens next. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Marcus had written out his ransom demands in advance. This wasn't a desperate spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a premeditated plan to kidnap his own sister and extort millions of dollars. The documents he references, Morrison continued, were also in his apartment. Professionally forged papers that would transfer $4 million from your inheritance into an account he'd already established in the Cayman Islands. $4 million. Half of everything Grandma Rose had left me, already allocated to an offshore account where it would disappear forever. Marcus had planned this down to the finest detail. Detective, where is he now? Unknown. His apartment was empty when we arrived, and his cell phone has been turned off since yesterday evening. We're monitoring the house, your family members, and the lawyer's office, but Sarah, he's had 2 days to prepare whatever location he's chosen. The house phone rang, cutting through our conversation. Jennifer answered with a shaky hello. Her face went white. She mouthed Marcus and put the call on speaker. Jennifer, I need you to give Sarah a message. Marcus's voice was eerily calm, completely different from the desperate tone of his recent calls. Tell her that family reunion shouldn't require police supervision. Tell her I'll be in touch soon with details about how we're going to resolve this inheritance situation once and for all. The line went dead. Detective Morrison's voice came through my cell phone. We just traced that call. Sarah, he's closer than we thought. The call had come from inside Grandma Rose's house. Detective Morrison's words hit me like ice water. Sarah, we have units responding now, but he's been inside the property for at least 30 minutes. The security system was disabled from the inside using the master code. The master code that only family knew. The code Grandma Rose had given me, and that I'd stupidly shared with Marcus years ago during a Christmas visit when he'd needed to let in a repair technician. He's in her house, I whispered, feeling violated in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't enough that Marcus had tormented Grandma Rose in her final months, now he was desecrating the place where she'd lived, where every room held memories of the woman he'd spent years emotionally abusing. Units are surrounding the property now, Morrison said. But Sarah, if he's barricaded inside, this could turn into a hostage situation. Hostage situation? There's no one in the house to take hostage. There is if he's planning to lure you there. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, I have something of yours at Grandma's house. Something I think you'll want back. You have 1 hour to come alone, or I start destroying everything she left you. Starting with the photo albums. The photo albums. 80 years of family history, irreplaceable pictures of Grandma Rose's life, her parents, her late husband, our childhood. Marcus knew exactly which pressure point to hit. Another text, I found her jewelry box too. The pearl necklace from her wedding, the ring from your grandfather. Would be a shame if something happened to them. Tick-tock, Sarah. Jennifer was reading over my shoulder, tears streaming down her face. He's lost his mind completely. Those pictures, Sarah, they're the only copies of so many memories. A third message came through with an attached photo, Marcus holding a lit cigarette lighter dangerously close to a stack of photo albums. In the background, I could see Grandma Rose's jewelry scattered across her dining room table like he'd ransacked her bedroom. 1 hour, the message read. Come to the back door. Come alone. Bring your phone but don't bring the police, or everything burns. Detective Morrison was already coordinating with the units surrounding the house. Sarah, do not even consider going in there. We'll find another way. What other way? He's going to destroy everything that's left of her. Those photos, her jewelry, detective, that's not just property. That's my grandmother's entire life. It's just stuff, Morrison said firmly. Your life is worth more than any photo album. But it wasn't just stuff, and Marcus knew it. Those albums contained the only existing pictures of Grandma Rose's parents, who died when I was young. The only photo of her and my grandfather on their wedding day. Pictures of me and Marcus's children, back when he'd been a different person, or at least before I'd realized who he really was. My phone rang. Marcus. Sarah, I assume the police have filled you in by now. I'm sitting in Grandma's living room, surrounded by about 60 years worth of memories. Beautiful pictures, really. I'd forgotten how happy we all used to be. Marcus, please don't do this. Those photos have nothing to do with the inheritance. Everything has to do with the inheritance. His calm facade cracked, showing the desperation underneath. Do you understand what you've cost me? I'm facing federal fraud charges because of loans I took out based on money that should have been mine. My house is going into foreclosure next week. My entire life is collapsing because a dying old woman decided to play favorites. She didn't play favorites. She made choices based on how we treated her. Marcus laughed bitterly. Right. The granddaughter who showed up twice a week gets $8 million. The grandson who was trying to build a business empire gets $1 and a lecture. That seems fair to you? The grandson who called her stupid and said he'd dance on her grave. Yeah, Marcus, that seems fair to me. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. 55 minutes, Sarah. Back door. Alone. Or I turn this place into a bonfire and disappear with whatever jewelry I can carry. The line went dead, leaving me staring at Jennifer and Detective Morrison, both of whom looked like they were watching me teeter on the edge of a cliff. Sarah, Morrison said carefully, we can get crisis negotiators here within the hour. We can. He'll burn everything before they finish setting up, I interrupted. You know he will. Marcus doesn't make empty threats when he's cornered. But as I said it, I realized the horrible truth. I was actually considering walking into my grandmother's house to face my desperate, potentially violent brother, alone, because he was holding photo albums hostage. Marcus had found the one thing that could make me risk everything Grandma Rose had left me. Including my life. I stared at my phone, Marcus's ultimatum echoing in my head. 55 minutes to walk into what was essentially a trap, or watch him destroy the last tangible pieces of Grandma Rose's life. Detective Morrison was coordinating with the tactical team surrounding the house, but I could see the frustration on his face. Every standard protocol was designed to wait Marcus out, not save a collection of irreplaceable photographs. There has to be another way in, I said suddenly. Detective, I know that house better than anyone. There are ways Marcus doesn't know about. Morrison looked up from his radio. What kind of ways? The root cellar. It connects to the basement through a tunnel that was built during Prohibition. Grandma Rose's father used it to hide liquor. The entrance is 50 yards from the house, hidden behind the old tool shed. Jennifer's eyes widened. Sarah, that tunnel hasn't been used in decades. It could be collapsed, flooded, anything. But Marcus doesn't know about it. He was never interested in Grandma's stories about the house's history. I turned to Morrison. If your people could create a distraction at the front of the house, I could get inside through the basement and... Absolutely not. Morrison's voice was firm. I'm not sending a civilian into an active hostage situation through a potentially unstable tunnel. My phone buzzed. Another photo from Marcus, Grandma Rose's wedding dress, pulled from her closet and spread across the floor with what looked like a kitchen knife next to it. 47 minutes, the text read. I'm getting bored waiting, Sarah. Maybe I should start with the dress and work my way up to the albums. The wedding dress that Grandma Rose had saved for 73 years, hoping one of her granddaughters might want to wear it someday. She'd shown it to me last Christmas, carefully wrapped in tissue paper and lavender sachets, her eyes bright with memory as she told me about the day she'd married Grandpa Thomas. That son of a bitch, Jennifer whispered. Sarah, that dress is irreplaceable. I stood up abruptly, my decision made. Detective Morrison, I need 5 minutes alone with my phone. Sarah, whatever you're thinking. 5 minutes. Please. Morrison reluctantly stepped outside Jennifer's kitchen, and I immediately called the number Robert Henderson had given me earlier, his personal cell. Henderson. Mr. Henderson, it's Sarah Morrison. I need to ask you something urgent about Grandma Rose's will. If something happens to me before the estate transfer is complete, what exactly happens to the inheritance? There was a pause. Sarah, are you in some kind of immediate danger? Just answer the question, please. The residuary clause states that if you predecease the completion of estate distribution, your portion would go to the same charities named in the will, the Cancer Society, Doctors Without Borders, and the Food Bank. Marcus would still receive nothing. And if I were to sign documents transferring part of my inheritance to Marcus under duress, would those be legally binding? Henderson's voice sharpened. Absolutely not. Any transfer made under threat of violence would be void. Sarah, what is your brother threatening? Everything that matters, I said quietly, and hung up. At least now I knew, even if Marcus succeeded in whatever he was planning, he still wouldn't get Grandma Rose's money. The only thing he could actually accomplish was hurting me and destroying irreplaceable family memories out of spite. Which somehow made this even more terrifying. My phone rang. Marcus again, and this time when I answered, I could hear sirens in the background through his end of the call. Sarah, it sounds like you brought friends to our family reunion. That's disappointing. His voice was getting more unhinged. 42 minutes just became 20. And Sarah? I just found Grandma Rose's journal. The one where she wrote about you every single day for the past 3 years. Would hate for something to happen to that too. He knew exactly what he was doing. The journal where Grandma Rose had documented our conversations, our shared memories, her thoughts about family and legacy and love. I'd been looking for it since she died, wondering if she'd left any final words for me. Detective Morrison came back into the kitchen just as I was grabbing my car keys. Sarah, step away from those keys right now. But I was done being careful. Done letting Marcus hold our grandmother's memory hostage while police protocols played out. He has her journal, detective. The last record of who she really was. I'm not letting him burn that too. And before Morrison could stop me, I was out Jennifer's back door and running toward my rental car, with 41 minutes to save what was left of the woman who'd loved us both, and who'd died never knowing how far Marcus would fall. I didn't make it to Grandma Rose's house alone. Detective Morrison had anticipated my desperate move and had units intercept me 3 blocks from Jennifer's house. But instead of arresting me, he made a decision that probably violated every protocol in his handbook. If you're determined to do something stupid, he said grimly, at least let us do it smart. 20 minutes later, I was crawling through the Prohibition-era tunnel beneath Grandma Rose's property, wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a radio, while a SWAT team created a carefully orchestrated distraction at the front of the house. The tunnel was exactly as I remembered from childhood adventures, narrow, musty, but structurally sound. I emerged in the basement and could hear Marcus moving around upstairs, talking to himself in an increasingly agitated voice. Through the radio, I heard Detective Morrison confirm that Marcus was in the living room, still surrounded by the photo albums and jewelry he'd scattered as leverage. The basement stairs creaked on the 5th step, something I'd known since I was 8 years old. I skipped it and made it to the first floor just as Marcus's phone rang upstairs. The negotiator, buying me precious time. Grandma Rose's journal was sitting on the kitchen counter, along with a gasoline can and a box of matches. Marcus had been planning to burn everything methodically, and the journal was apparently his finale. I grabbed it and radioed my position. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I knew you'd come, Marcus said quietly. He was holding the cigarette lighter from his earlier photo, and his eyes had the glassy look of someone who'd crossed a line and couldn't find his way back. I knew you wouldn't let me destroy her precious memories. Marcus, it's over. The police have the house surrounded. You're not getting any money, and you're not getting away with this. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Getting away? Sarah, I lost everything 3 days ago. My house, my credit, my future, it's all gone. I'm facing federal fraud charges for loans I took out based on money that was never actually mine. Then why are you doing this? If you know you can't win, why destroy what's left of her? Marcus's expression shifted, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine grief beneath the desperation. Because she chose you over me. After everything, after 31 years of being her grandson, she chose you. And I need to understand why. Marcus, she didn't choose me over you. She chose kindness over cruelty. She chose presence over absence. She chose love over greed. I held up the journal. Do you want to know what she wrote about you in here? Even after everything you put her through? His hand trembled slightly on the lighter. What? I opened the journal to a page I glimpsed while grabbing it, dated just 2 weeks before Grandma Rose's death. March 20th, I dream sometimes that Marcus will call and sound like the little boy who used to help me bake cookies. I know he won't, but I dream anyway. I hope wherever he is, he finds peace. I hope he finds love. I hope he remembers that I loved him too, even when he made it impossible to like him. Marcus's face crumpled. The lighter fell from his hand, clattering across the kitchen floor. She never stopped loving you, I continued. But she couldn't keep enabling behavior that was destroying you both. The will wasn't punishment, Marcus. It was consequences. The SWAT team found us 20 minutes later, Marcus sitting on Grandma Rose's kitchen floor, crying like the lost child he'd apparently always been, while I carefully gathered the scattered photographs and jewelry he'd used as weapons. He was sentenced to 18 months for elder financial abuse and attempted kidnapping. The forged inheritance documents earned him another year in federal prison. I used part of Grandma Rose's inheritance to pay off his debts, but only after his release, and only on the condition that he complete addiction counseling and anger management. She would have wanted him to have a chance at redemption, even if she couldn't provide it herself. The photo albums sit in my living room now, carefully restored and digitized. Grandma Rose's journal has a place of honor on my bookshelf, next to the picture of her in her wedding dress, the dress Marcus never touched, despite his threats. Sometimes I still get angry about those 3 years of abuse she endured in silence, documenting everything for a legal battle she hoped would never come. But mostly I'm grateful she trusted me enough to leave me not just her fortune, but the responsibility of deciding who deserved forgiveness. Marcus visits every Christmas now. We'll never be close, but we're family. Even Grandma Rose knew that meant something, despite everything.